The following is to demonstrate how we can actually measure the return on investment for a training program. To do that, I'll cover 4 elements. The first one is a methodology for measuring return, then talk about the different types of returns that you need to be paying attention to then link it to an actual example of a training program that did in fact produce significant value, and finally explain why we were able to obtain such a result. So let's start with the methodology. Sales graph, right? Sales versus time. On this one, we're going to show you 2 lines. The blue line is what we call the trend. It's the evolution of sales without any training initiative. And then in red, what normally would happen or what could potentially happen after we apply some kind of development program. So, 2 groups are exactly the same for a few months. Then we have this initiative, and then normally we should see a separation of those 2 lines. Sales results for people not trained versus sales results of the ones that received some kind of development. Let's say that the difference here is $1.3 million. Now, if we did spend $1 million on that training program, it would yield a net result or increase of $300,000. At this point, it's up to you to decide if that's sufficient to prove a decent return on your investment. One more factor to take into account, because after that initial effect of training, there will be some residual effect, even though you reach a plateau at some point, but that effect will continue and it can be quite significant. So apart from dollar value, which really is important, what else do you need to consider as in terms of measuring return on investment? We would argue that employee engagement is critical. Let me identify this. So employee engagement is critical for you because it impacts all kinds of other factors. I can say that, but let me use the Harvard Business Review from 2008 to illustrate this concept. What this article is showing is the following. It talks about what makes a company profitable. And in fact, it's kind of a flow chart. It shows what element need to happen, events need to happen, or structures need to be put in place to create that profitability. First thing we notice is that customer loyalty is directly influential on profitability. We knew that, right? And that's why a lot of investment is made on access to those customers and the messaging, right? And that's good. We need to continue to do that. What we have to realize here is that it is employees, their retention, their productivity, their satisfaction, their engagement that produces the value that has an influence on those customers. That's why it's not enough to invest on the customer side. It's important to invest on employees, making them as productive as possible. That's why training and development will produce return on investment. The key question we need to answer is any increase in sales or productivity associated to training or simply is linked to an accident? This is where we take the example that we gave earlier into practice and actually measure what happens if we help people grow and develop their skills. Our demonstration started with this. A client asked us for an advanced sales training program for their senior group of salespeople. As usual with a large project, we do a pilot so that we can ensure that the program runs effectively and we can fine-tune any of the approaches that we put forward. Now, but it gave us another opportunity. What we did is to take 20 sales consultants around the country that had a very similar environment in terms of market trends, skills, and challenges. And what we've done is to randomly separate those 20 into two different groups and then test one against the other and evaluate and measure the return on investment from training. So here's how it worked. So when we separated those two groups, we first verified that their sales trends were indeed very similar. So we took those two different graphs from those groups, you put them together and realized that, yeah, okay, so if we do nothing with both of those groups, they're going to go in the same direction. Great, that's a good start. Something important to realize also is that they were all selling an established product, in fact, the same product. There was nothing new in terms of marketing, in terms of strategy or messaging. And no significant trial was going to be published to demonstrate that the product was either way better or way worse than it was. So we had a very solid environment to test one variable, which was training. So we now have two groups. The control group with its trend and the expectation that they're going to just continue in that direction, and the pilot group, which is receiving training. Now, obviously, these people are also trending in the same direction, but hopefully what they will learn, the skills that they will start applying, will change that trend and increase sales numbers, and we should see normally here a difference. That's where we can evaluate the impact of training on the return on investment. This is how the training program was designed. First, we had people prepare. One key element of preparation is that the participants, the sales consultants, were to identify 3 key customers that were a challenge for them. Customers with whom they were not really making any progress over the last 2 or 3 years. Second thing is we brought them to the workshop, 2 days together. And what happened is many things, but one key element is that they started working on a very specific plan of action for those 3 customers, using the new concepts to make their plan more effective. And finally, and maybe most importantly, in fact, is that we performed follow-up sessions with them. Throughout the 9 months, we got the same group together so that they could, in a structured manner, report on their plan of action with those customers and then share their best practices. And that's where the really key learning happened, because peers influenced peers. Someone with the same problem that I have is telling me or explaining to me how I figured out how to fix the problem. That's where the real influence was, and that's where we got the impact that made the results we're going to show you in just a few seconds really happen. This is how we were able to measure results. In fact, we looked at sales to forecast. We were able to identify the number of salespeople, their percentage, that met their forecast or exceeded that forecast for the year. Because we started in April, we measured at the end of December, we have those 9 months after training in terms of measurement of the effect. So results, 70%, or 75% in fact, of the people that were trained, the pilot group, met their forecast or exceeded it. That number was 40% for the control group. Remembering that they were trending in the same direction, we can therefore conclude that this difference here is due to the training program, is due to the new knowledge and skills that people have developed during those 9 months. To measure that in dollars brought us to an additional revenue of $260,000. So 10 people within 9 months were able to bring in an additional $260,000. Well, according to the company, it was meaningful. The actual total cost of the training initiative was $53,000. The additional revenue was $260,000. So basically, there was a $207,000 net increase due to training. It's not too bad. Now let's explain why we got those results. Those are comments from the sales consultants that participated in that study, the pilot group. First one. The first one has to do with perception and loyalty of the customer. Now, this person said that because of what they did, because of their change in behavior, because of the methodologies that they applied, they gained increased trust and value from their customers. The Harvard Business Review is very clear on this. It increases the loyalty and the satisfaction of customers. First reason. Second reason is linked to confidence. As you can see, that person said, I should have had that training 5 years ago because I would have avoided mistakes. When people, especially sales consultants or anybody for that matter, when they apply a methodology that doesn't work, it really eats at their ability to confidently continue to work with these people. So the methodologies, once again, change their perception, change their behavior to get better results through confidence. Lastly, this is all about productivity or efficiency. In this case, we have a sales consultant that said that for many, many years, they were continuously discussing safety as a major way to convince their customers. This is interesting because in this particular instance, that sales consultant said the client, the physician, clearly now expressed that safety was not an issue. So through their skills, through the development of their plan of action and understanding specifically that how they could better communicate with those customers, that one sales consultant realized that they were making a mistake all along. They were talking about something that made no sense to the customer, hence they couldn't really connect with them. Changing that made a difference where? In terms of value that they brought and in terms of trust of those customers. So here are the key factors that explain that positive difference. First, the preparation. Each sales consultant worked on those three different difficult customers. The simple fact of thinking about them started their reasoning behind their problems so that they could start thinking about solutions, which we did during the workshop. A key thing in the workshop also is that the managers of those sales consultants were present so that they could work together fixing those cases or working on a plan of action for those three customers. And like any good training program, we focused on finding solutions to issues. Finally, and as I said earlier, what was most important were the structured follow-ups. Numerous times we were able to bring the whole group together so that they could discuss actions that made a difference and explain the reasoning behind their results. So it seems to be clear now that people development through training can produce a significant return on your investment. Engaged and productive employees will increase the value of a corporation or a company and thus will directly impact the satisfaction of customers. Please visit our website for more ideas and solutions.